The neon sign of the Desert Palms Motel flickered against the night sky, its red glow washing over cracked asphalt and forgotten dreams. Room 7's curtains hung slightly parted, just enough for a sliver of light to escape. Inside those thin walls, 3 lives were about to collide in a moment that would leave 2 bodies on the floor and 1 soul forever shattered. What began as whispered promises and stolen glances had evolved into regular Thursday night meetings at this roadside refuge. For Lila Carter, these moments represented escape. For Ryan Blake, perhaps conquest. Neither could have known that tonight the door would swing open to reveal Ethan Carter. Decorated soldier, devoted husband, and a man who had just discovered the ultimate betrayal. The clock read 9:47 p.m. when the first scream pierced the night. By 9:53, silence had returned, but nothing would ever be the same. What happens when military discipline meets betrayal? When a man trained to protect his country discovers he couldn't protect his marriage. Ethan Carter had survived 3 combat tours, witnessed the horrors of war, and maintained his composure under enemy fire. His military training had taught him to control his emotions, to channel fear into focus, and to execute missions with precision. But no training manual covered what to do when you discover your wife in another man's arms. The human heart doesn't follow military protocol. It doesn't respond to orders or respect chain of command. When betrayal cuts deep enough, even the most disciplined soldier can become unpredictable. This isn't just a story about infidelity. It's about what happens when loyalty, the foundation of military service, is shattered in the most personal way possible. It's about how quickly honor can transform into vengeance, and how one night in a cheap motel changed countless lives forever. Have you ever felt the sting of betrayal burn through your chest? That moment when trust collapses and something primal takes over? If you've ever wondered how far someone might go when pushed beyond their breaking point, this story will shake you to your core. Before we continue, take a second to hit that subscribe button to join our True Crime Village community. We explore the darkest corners of human behavior to understand what drives ordinary people to extraordinary acts. Your subscription helps us bring these crucial stories to light. Now, let's return to that fateful night at the Desert Palms Motel. At 32, Master Sergeant Ethan Carter had already earned 2 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star. His commanders described him as the model soldier, methodical, composed, and effective. The son of a steel worker from Ohio, Ethan enlisted at 18, finding in the military the structure and purpose his childhood had lacked. Carter never flinches, his squad mates would say. Not when bullets fly, not when hard calls need making. His personnel file bulged with commendations for leadership during critical operations. In Afghanistan, he'd once carried a wounded comrade 3 miles through hostile territory after their vehicle hit an IED. In Iraq, he'd held a strategic position for 72 hours when reinforcements couldn't break through. Combat made sense to Ethan: clear objectives, defined enemies, established protocols. But war extracts costs invisible to the eye. Each deployment carved away at Ethan's emotional capacity. Sleep came reluctantly, haunted by faces of the fallen. The constant vigilance, the need to scan every roadside, question every approaching civilian, rewired his brain for perpetual alertness. Home became the foreign territory, civilian life the confusing mission. The hardest part, he once told a military counselor, is the switching. Over there, shutting down feelings keeps you alive. Back here, nobody understands why you can't just turn them back on. Military psychologists call it emotional numbing, the brain's protective mechanism against trauma. For Ethan, this translated to increasing difficulty connecting with Lila during his brief periods home. Words that once flowed freely between them became trapped behind walls of experiences he couldn't translate into civilian terms. Yet Ethan's commitment never wavered. Duty provided the framework through which he viewed existence. His uniform hung perfectly pressed. His boots shone with meticulous care. His weapon remained immaculately maintained, extensions of a philosophy that valued order amid chaos. Even his personal schedule ran with clockwork consistency. 5 a.m. workouts, evening perimeter checks of their home, Sunday calls to his mother. Honor wasn't just a concept but his core identity. A soldier's word is his bond. He'd repeat, a mantra inherited from his first drill sergeant. Loyalty ran bone deep, especially to those who served alongside him and to Lila, who had promised to wait through the long separations. How would you handle being separated from everyone you love for months, sometimes years at a time? Knowing you might miss birthdays, anniversaries, the quiet everyday moments that build a life? How would your relationship survive when communication comes through spotty video calls, often cut short by operational demands? The physical evidence of Ethan's service marked both body and home. A scar running from elbow to wrist where shrapnel had torn through flesh. The meticulously arranged shadow box displaying his medals. The go bag is perpetually packed in the hall closet. The reflexive scan of restaurant seating for tactical advantage. The startled flinch at sudden noises that Lila pretended not to notice. Each deployment reset the clock on their marriage. A fresh attempt to reconnect with someone who returned slightly different each time. At 29, Lila Carter inhabited an existence filled with absence. The military wife who once glowed with pride at ceremonies now sat alone at dinner tables set for one. Wedding photos smiled from the walls of a house that echoed with emptiness. She tried everything. Volunteer work on base, part-time jobs, evening classes. Yet nothing filled the void Ethan's deployments carved into her days. "We've been married 7 years," she confided to her sister. "But we've only lived together for maybe 3. Their anniversary fell during Ethan's 3rd tour. She celebrated by watching their wedding video alone, wine glass in hand. When mothers on base gathered to discuss child-rearing, Lila remained silent. Their plans for families perpetually postponed by the next deployment notice. The isolation grew more profound with each separation. Friends with civilian husbands gradually stopped inviting her to couple events. Her parents, while sympathetic, couldn't truly comprehend the unique strain of military marriage. The constant anxiety, the inability to plan beyond the next assignment, the fragmented communication. "Yesterday he called for 4 minutes before the connection dropped," she wrote in her journal. "He asked about the leaking faucet but never asked how I was feeling. I wonder if he even remembers how to ask anymore." When your relationship exists primarily through hurried phone calls and lagging video chats, how do you maintain genuine connection? When one partner faces life-threatening danger while the other battles mundane loneliness, how do you bridge that perceptual gap? The cruel reality of military relationships often goes unaddressed. Emotional neglect can happen even when both people still care deeply. Ryan Blake entered her life on an ordinary Tuesday at the coffee shop where she worked. His warm smile and attentive questions contrasted sharply with Ethan's clipped communications. As an accountant at a local firm, Ryan's life moved at a predictable rhythm. No sudden deployments, no middle-of-night emergency calls. "You have the most expressive eyes," he told her on her 3rd shift serving him. "They reflect everything you're feeling." The comment struck her speechless. When had anyone last noticed her feelings? Their conversation evolved from casual pleasantries to personal confidences. Ryan listened, really listened, leaning forward when she spoke, remembering details she mentioned weeks earlier. His hand brushed hers while reaching for sugar packets. The brief contact sent electricity through fingers that had forgotten human touch. The first coffee outside work happened innocently. The first dinner came with rationalizations. The first kiss with guilt and exhilaration in equal measure. "He sees me," she whispered to her reflection afterward. "Not the soldier's wife. Just me." But what Lila didn't realize was that her search for comfort would lead to bloodshed. The gentle hands that wiped away her tears would soon lie motionless on the motel carpet. The voice that affirmed her worth would be silenced forever by a husband trained to eliminate threats. What began as stolen moments transformed into elaborate deceptions. Lila crafted a fictional book club that met Thursday evenings. Ryan invented client consultations that required his presence until late. Their lies multiplied, each falsehood making the next easier to tell. Their rendezvous point became the Desert Palms Motel, 20 miles outside town, far enough to avoid recognition. Room 7, with its faded wallpaper and sagging mattress, became their sanctuary. The shabby decor faded from notice as they created an alternate reality within those four walls. One where military schedules and wedding vows didn't exist. "This isn't just physical," Ryan whispered during their third meeting. "I'm falling for you, Lila." His words filled empty spaces inside her that had gone hollow during Ethan's absences. At 34, Ryan Blake presented himself as the antithesis of Ethan Carter. Where Ethan was disciplined, Ryan was spontaneous. Where Ethan communicated with military precision, Ryan spoke in emotional language. He brought takeout food, remembered her favorite wine, played music she enjoyed. Yet beneath his attentive exterior lay calculated intent. Ryan had pursued married women before. The wedding ring on Lila's finger wasn't a deterrent but a challenge. His interest intensified precisely because she belonged to someone else. The military husband's lengthy absence merely made his target more vulnerable. "He doesn't deserve you," became Ryan's mantra, whispered between kisses. "A man who really loved you wouldn't leave you alone for months." Each statement drove a wedge deeper between Lila and her marriage vows. Their affair accelerated with reckless momentum. Text messages multiplied, their content growing increasingly explicit. Hotel receipts accumulated in Ryan's glove compartment. Security cameras captured their arrivals, always 15 minutes apart. Evidence neither considered important until it was too late. By week 8, caution eroded. They arrived together once, then again. They lingered in the parking lot, exchanging kisses beside their cars. Ryan posted a cryptic social media photo of their intertwined hands. Small mistakes accumulated like grains of sand, building a mountain that would eventually collapse upon them both. This story takes a dark turn that you won't believe. Like this video now if you've ever witnessed how quickly trust can collapse when secrets come to light. The choices we make in private rarely stay private forever. For months into their affair, Lila missed Ethan's call while lying beside Ryan. Unknown to both lovers, this missed connection would set in motion events neither could have anticipated. Because Ethan Carter wasn't just any husband. He was a soldier trained to notice patterns, investigate anomalies, and neutralize threats. Ethan's return came without warning. A mission concluded early, granting him 2 weeks at home before his next assignment. He arrived with a duffel bag of dirty laundry and a small carved elephant for Lila's collection. His surprise homecoming fantasy dissolved when he found the house empty at 7 p.m. on a Thursday. When Lila finally returned at 11:30, her explanation about a book club meeting rang hollow. The perfume clinging to her clothes wasn't one he recognized. Her phone remained clutched in her hand throughout their conversation, screen deliberately angled away from his view. The soldier in him, the part trained to detect threats, noted these discrepancies without comment. His tactical mind cataloged each anomaly. Lipstick slightly smudged, hair mussed in ways inconsistent with her story, the nervous tapping of fingernails against her phone case. "How was your deployment?" she asked, not meeting his eyes. "Standard," he replied, watching her shoulders relax at his vague response. Morning brought more disconnections. Lila's coffee routine had changed. She now took it black instead of with cream. Her yoga sessions, once a weekend ritual, had apparently been replaced by Thursday book club meetings. The novel on her nightstand hadn't progressed past the same dog-eared page he'd noted before his deployment. The wooden box where Ethan stored their wedding album now contained unfamiliar receipts. Gas stations in towns Lila had no reason to visit, a wine bar receipt time-stamped during supposed book club hours. Have you ever had that gut feeling something wasn't right? That instinctive knowledge that truth has been bent beyond recognition? Ethan's instincts were about to be confirmed in the worst possible way. The plain manila envelope arrived 3 days after his return, delivered by hand to their mailbox. No postage, no return address. Inside, a typed note read simply, "A soldier deserves honesty." Beneath it lay 5 photographs. Lila entering the Desert Palms Motel. Lila and a dark-haired man kissing beside a car, the same man's hand resting possessively on her hip. Room number 7's door closing behind them, the motel's neon sign illuminating their embrace. Ethan's hands remained perfectly steady as he examined each image. For 3 days, Ethan spoke and moved as if underwater. functioning mechanically while emotions gathered force beneath a practiced calm. He cleaned his service weapon at the kitchen table while Lila slept. He verified the Thursday pattern through bank statements and phone records. He drove past the Desert Palms Motel once, noting exits and blind spots with military assessment. His mind compartmentalized the betrayal into manageable segments, just as his training had taught him to process battlefield trauma. The tactical part of his brain maintained routine morning runs, protein shakes, weather-appropriate attire. But behind his eyes, rage and grief collided in toxic combination. The soldier who had maintained composure under mortar fire now struggled to regulate his breathing when Lila's phone chimed with messages. The man who had neutralized threats across 3 continents now focused that same tactical precision on domestic intelligence gathering. "Book club tonight?" he asked casually over breakfast. "Yes," Lila answered too quickly. "We're discussing East of Eden." His voice remained neutral. "Steinbeck. Good choice." By 8 p.m. Thursday, Ethan positioned himself in the parking lot of the Desert Palms Motel. His truck parked behind a dumpster with clear sight lines to room 7. The weight of his wedding band felt suddenly foreign against his skin as he watched Lila's car pull into the lot, followed 15 minutes later by a black sedan. The line between justice and revenge was about to be crossed forever. Ethan allowed 30 minutes to pass, time enough for betrayal to be undeniable. Each second ticked by with excruciating clarity, his military watch counting down to confrontation. He moved with deliberate steps across the asphalt, combat boots silent despite their weight. At room 7 he paused. Music played softly inside. A laugh, Lila's laugh, filtered through thin walls. Ethan tested the door and found it unlocked. A careless mistake born from routine complacency. The door swung open under his hand. The tableau before him burned instantly into memory. Sheets tangled around entwined bodies, wine glasses on the nightstand, Lila's wedding ring placed carefully beside the lamp. "Ethan!" Lila's voice cracked with shock as she scrambled to cover herself. The man, Ryan, reacted with panicked confusion, reaching for discarded clothing while attempting to process the identity of the figure in the doorway. "You must be Ryan," Ethan said with unnerving calm. What followed unfolded with terrible momentum. Ryan lunged toward his jacket, whether for a phone or weapon no one would ever know. Ethan's combat reflexes engaged automatically. The first blow caught Ryan across the jaw, sending him sprawling against the nightstand. Glass shattered. Lila screamed, scrambling from the bed. "Ethan, stop, please." Her pleas registered distantly as background noise. Ryan recovered enough to swing wildly, catching Ethan's shoulder. The counterattack came with practiced efficiency, measured force delivered with precision. Bone cracked beneath Ethan's fist. The lamp toppled as Ryan fell, his head striking the corner of the bedside table with a sickening thud. Blood pooled instantly on the carpet. Lila launched herself at Ethan, nails tearing at his face. "What have you done? What have you done?" Her attack triggered something primal. The compartmentalization failed catastrophically. Suddenly she wasn't his wife but another threat. His hands found her throat with muscle memory honed by close combat training. By the time awareness returned to Ethan's eyes, both bodies lay motionless on the floor. The overhead light buzzed with fluorescent indifference. Blood mixed with spilled wine across the carpet. His wedding band gleamed accusingly under the harsh light. Motel clerk Devin Mills discovered the scene at 11:42 p.m. after a guest in room 9 reported sounds of struggle. His 911 call captured the shock. "There's blood everywhere. 2 people down. A man sitting on the bed just staring at the wall." First responders found Ethan exactly as described. Immobile, expressionless, hands resting palm up on his knees. He offered no resistance when officers secured him. Ryan Blake was pronounced dead at the scene from blunt force trauma. Lila Carter showed no vital signs. Attempts at resuscitation failed. The Desert Palms Motel transformed overnight from anonymous waypoint to forensic laboratory. Crime scene technicians documented blood spatter patterns, collected fingerprints, and photographed the room from every angle. Room 7's keycard revealed consistent Thursday access for the previous 4 months. When military police arrived, jurisdiction questions emerged immediately. As an active-duty soldier, Ethan's case potentially fell under military justice. The local sheriff argued the civilian nature of the victims placed it squarely in county jurisdiction. This territorial dispute delayed initial processing by 6 hours. The military investigation proceeded alongside civilian efforts. Ethan's commanding officer arrived with JAG representatives. His service record underwent thorough examination: combat deployments, psychological evaluations, incident reports. Combat stress markers appeared throughout his file, though none had triggered intervention. "He was our best," his platoon sergeant told investigators. "Absolutely reliable under pressure. This doesn't match the soldier I know." Phone records confirmed the affair's timeline. Security footage showed multiple Thursday meetings. The black sedan belonged to Ryan Blake, whose social media history revealed a pattern of pursuing attached women. The anonymous envelope containing the photographs was traced to a print shop frequented by military personnel, but the customer had paid cash. The community fractured along predictable lines. Military families rallied around explanations involving PTSD and combat stress. Civilian neighbors demanded justice for the murdered accountant who never bothered anyone. Lila's family retreated from public view, devastated by dual grief: the loss of their daughter and the destruction of her reputation. But what happened next reveals something about our justice system that few people talk about: how different legal systems, civilian and military, evaluate mental state and culpability. While the district attorney pushed for first-degree murder charges, military authorities advocated for diminished capacity considerations based on combat-related stress disorders. The press descended like vultures, constructing narratives that suited their audiences. The jealous military husband, the neglected military wife, the predatory civilian boyfriend. None captured the complex truth of 3 broken people whose collision course began long before that fatal Thursday night. The State versus Carter trial began 9 months after the motel incident. Ethan appeared in court wearing a charcoal suit that hung loosely on his frame, military posture still evident despite civilian clothes. He faced 2 counts of first-degree murder. Prosecution painted Ethan as a calculating killer who planned the confrontation with cold precision. This defendant tracked his victims, watched them enter the motel, and executed a premeditated attack, the DA argued, displaying timeline evidence of Ethan's movements. Defense countered with combat operational stress theory. Dr. Marion Kelly, forensic psychiatrist specializing in military trauma, testified about Ethan's psychological state. Master Sergeant Carter experienced a trauma response that temporarily altered his perception. His combat conditioning, trained to eliminate threats swiftly, activated in a moment of extreme emotional distress. 3 psychological evaluations reached conflicting conclusions. The prosecution's expert diagnosed antisocial personality disorder with narcissistic features. The defense's specialist identified complex PTSD with dissociative episodes. The court-appointed examiner noted significant combat-induced trauma without proper treatment. Fellow soldiers offered crucial testimony. Lieutenant Colonel James Harmon described Ethan as the most controlled soldier in his unit. Staff Sergeant Wilson recounted an incident in Kandahar. Carter pulled 3 men from a burning Humvee while under fire. Even wounded, he maintained perfect composure. Most compelling was Captain Michael's testimony about military conditioning. "We train soldiers to react instantly to threats. We don't train them how to untrain those responses." The jury deliberated for 52 hours. Their verdict: guilty of second-degree murder for Ryan Blake's death, voluntary manslaughter for Lila Carter's death. The judge, a Vietnam veteran himself, sentenced Ethan to 25 years with possibility of parole after 15. As Ethan was led away, his expression remained unchanged, the same blank stare first responders had witnessed in Room 7. This case raises serious questions about military mental health support. Are we properly helping soldiers transition between war zones and home life? Is our system identifying at-risk veterans before tragedy strikes? Comment below with your thoughts on how we can better support our service members. If you know a veteran struggling with reintegration, what resources have you found most helpful? The Carter family tree withered in the aftermath. Ethan's parents declined all interview requests, eventually relocating to avoid media attention. His sister resigned from her teaching position after students discovered her connection to the Motel murderer. Family gatherings once marked by pride in their military son now occurred without photographs or reminiscence. For Lila's parents, grief mingled with complicated anger. They'd lost not only their daughter but also their understanding of her life. "We didn't know she was unhappy," her mother admitted during a rare interview. "We thought military marriage was difficult but stable." They established a foundation for military spouses focusing on mental health resources. Ryan's teenage son from a previous relationship became collateral damage. Overnight, he transformed from anonymous high school student to the victim's boy. Classmates' whispers followed him through hallways. His grades plummeted. He eventually moved cross-country to live with relatives. The Desert Palms Motel closed 6 months after the murders. Room 7 remained sealed even after police released the crime scene. Vacancy rates plummeted as travelers chose alternate accommodations. Eventually, a discount store chain purchased the property, demolishing the structure. Only concrete outlines of the foundation remain visible from the highway. Inside Bedford Maximum Security Prison, Ethan maintained military habits. Bed made with precise corners, scheduled exercise, meticulous grooming. He spoke rarely, responding to questions with minimal words. Prison psychologists noted his tendency to dissociate during therapy sessions about the crime. His journal entries revealed evolving awareness. "I was trained to protect but couldn't protect myself from my own response. The military gave me weapons but no shields." Another entry read simply, "Two dead because no one recognized the warning signs." For military families nationwide, the case ignited uncomfortable conversations. Support group attendance doubled. Military newsletters published warning signs of combat stress. The Pentagon expanded mandatory psychological evaluations after deployment. General Maxwell Collins, addressing officer candidates, referenced the case directly. "We excel at preparing warriors for battle but fail at preparing them for homecoming. This changes today." New protocols emerged requiring relationship counseling before and after deployments. The tragedy ultimately exposed the gap between America's celebration of service members and its inadequate infrastructure for their psychological well-being. A disconnect measured not in policy papers but in broken lives. The tragedy of Room 7 wasn't created in a single moment but assembled gradually through a combination of forces. Military deployment schedules designed for tactical efficiency never accounted for emotional sustainability. Ethan's professional excellence masked personal deterioration. Lila's growing isolation found no remedy within military support systems. 3 people, each making understandable choices in isolation, created an intersection point of devastating consequences. Warning signs flashed like emergency beacons but went unheeded. Ethan's increasing emotional numbness after deployments. Lila's withdrawal from base community events. The marriage counseling sessions recommended but never attended. The combat stress assessment flagged but deemed not critical by overworked military psychologists. Ryan's history of pursuing vulnerable women, noted in previous relationship patterns. Each signal represented an intervention opportunity lost. Each missed connection between husband and wife widened the gap where resentment grew. Each unanswered call became another brick in the wall between them. The true cost of relationship neglect extends far beyond the immediate participants. Children lose parents. Communities lose trust. Military units lose valuable members. The ripples extend outward for generations. Ryan's son will carry this story forever. Ethan's nieces and nephews will inherit a legacy marked by tragedy rather than service. Lila's parents will never celebrate another birthday with their daughter. More devastating is what might have been. The children never born, the decades of partnership never experienced, the healing that could have occurred if proper support had been available. 3 lives obliterated in minutes after years of slow-building pressure with no release valve. This tragedy could have been prevented. The warning signs were visible to anyone equipped to recognize them. Share this video to raise awareness about the invisible struggles military families face. Your single click might reach someone fighting similar battles, someone standing at their own crossroads of isolation, duty, and temptation. And if you haven't already, subscribe to True Crime Village for more stories that might just save a life. Because understanding what drives ordinary people to extraordinary breaking points isn't just fascinating. It's essential for preventing the next tragedy waiting to unfold.